Well, welcome to a very special episode of Synergetic Culture. My name's Adam Bieber. I'm your host, and I'm so excited that you're joining us for this episode. If you're watching this video, we're recording live in Voodoo Brewing Company in Roswell, Georgia. This location is actually opening up later this week on December 14th, 2024. And so depending on when you watch this, the brewery might already be open. And so my seat might actually be filled with people enjoying their time here. But we got to get in early and record a very special episode with one of the owners of Voodoo Brewing Company here at this Roswell location, James Rouse. James, welcome to Synergetic Culture, man.
Thanks, Adam.
Yeah, dude, it's awesome to have you. So I love telling stories on this podcast. And one of my favorite things is being able to talk to someone, learn about them, and see what kind of life lessons I can learn from someone else's story. Because what I've realized is everybody's been through something. Everybody's got a bit of a story, and there's so many things that we can learn from just talking to other people and building relationships. And so what's really cool is you and I met just a few months ago at a networking event. Yeah. And I'll never forget, you and your wife, Betsy, walked right up to me, and you guys were like, hey, we're with Voodoo Brewing Company. And I was like, cool, I love beer. and so we just hit it off and started talking, and within a few minutes, you started sharing the story of why you decided to go all in on this brewery. Yeah. And so I'm super excited to talk to you and kind of share this story with our listeners and, hopefully bring some people out to the brewery when you guys open later this week on the 14th.
I hope everyone's thirsty and hungry.
Yeah. So you have this line that you always say about craft beer. Why don't you go ahead and share it?
Craft beer without community is just beer.
That's right.
I mean, our whole staff's going to live by that. We feel that we can't be successful without the community.
Yeah.
So you'll notice when you walk into our brew pub, we'll have doors hung up by local artists. We're trying to inspire as many people as we can in the community and make this a local gathering place for the community to feel safe at and have a good time.
Yeah, it's in such a beautiful spot. You got such a great location. It's super accessible from all the major roadways. Anyways, if you're watching the video or you get to see pictures, it is beautiful. You got to come and check it out if you're in the area. But James, the story doesn't start here. No. Just a few days before the grand opening. Your story goes much further back, and I'm excited because I don't know the full story, so I get to kind of learn a little bit about you over the course of this episode. So if you wouldn't mind, just share with me where you grew up, kind of where you're from, what your life was like growing up, just maybe like the younger age years, maybe up to like middle school.
Okay. Well, I was born in Okinawa, Japan. Wow. On a Navy base. Matter of fact, me and my wife were born in the same hospital.
That's crazy.
We didn't know each other until years later. I don't remember Japan. I was too young. We then moved from there to Alaska.
Wow.
I lived there for 5 years. My dad was Air Force. My mom was also in the Air Force. And he pretty much was always on the road traveling. Alaska is when I started to remember. And, we go from preschool. There I did preschool, I did kindergarten, I did first grade. And then after that, I went to a different school every year until I hit high school.
Wow.
My dad was a military career person.
Yep.
And we were constantly moving. We moved all around the Southeast. My wife, Betsy, his family moved overseas into England, and then they finally settled down in Michigan. So all the way up to middle school, there's a lot of moving around.
Yeah.
So I would say we went from Alaska, came down to Goldsboro, North Carolina, went to one school district for 1 year, and then we moved on base and went to another school district for 1 year. What really kept me going was I loved baseball. So when I was growing up, I loved playing baseball. I was really good. I was just naturally talented at it. Even to this day, I'm pretty good at it.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say I'm a professional, but I love it. I know how it works. I know the mechanics of it, and I know how to make good decisions on the fly.
Yeah.
So I was a catcher most of my Little League career, and as I, of course, grew up, I wasn't as big as other people. I'm kind of stouty guy, but like tall. I was not very tall.
Yeah.
So they moved me to third base after that. But sticking to the middle school side of it, I played catcher, and then every year I had to go retry out for another league.
Golly.
So they would always I got to prove myself over and over and over again.
Yeah.
And I think those situations made me learn how to be open and talk to people that I've never met before.
Sure.
Make it a little bit easier. But also, you always have this, you got to prove to everybody else
Wow.
you can do it.
Wow.
And you have to have that mentality, especially when you're moving around as a military brat. But yeah, I mean, I loved baseball. When I was in Goldsboro, North Carolina, probably in the 5th grade, 6th grade, we made it all the way to the state semifinals, and
wow,
you know, we lost to the team that ultimately won that year. But those were some of my best memories that I've ever had. My mom was the team mom. There was nothing greater than after the game, you had your fudge round and your Capri Sun.
Yeah,
that was my mom, and so we had fun. I mean, we didn't have Facebook, of course, back then, so like, you know, you couldn't keep in touch with people.
Sure,
you just moved on. You made new friends, and
wow.
then finally we settled in Charleston. That was my last middle school year, and then I entered into high school from there. So, and that's when actually my parents actually divorced at that point.
Gotcha.
So that was like an event in my life that made you realize that things aren't going to always be the same.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Wow. So a couple pretty defining things in your life. Not some people, they grow up in the same town, they live in the same house, and you know, that's just how life is for them. And then you got others. My dad was also in the military, but he'd got out by the time him and my mom had kids. But we moved a few times, and we moved across the country, and pre-Facebook. And so when you do that, like, you know, thankfully with, you know, growing up in Hawaii and then moving to California and then Georgia, like, you kind of have different stages of life and different friend groups from those stages. And, you know, because of things like social media, and you can kind of reconnect with people, but you do kind of have to start over when you do that. And that's a unique experience. Some people don't even experience it until they go off to college or they get their first job and it's in a town away from where they grew up. And so for you to kind of have that recurring experience, I'm sure it had to build a level of resiliency, but then also like the ability and soft skills to say, hey, I can go and make new friends. I'm going to be okay. This is a new school, but I'm going to be fine. And then you add the baseball element to it. I love team sports. I think it's one of the greatest things for people to experience growing up, because I feel like it helped build my character and helped give me the tools that I learned to navigate difficult things. But again, having to go out and try out again and again and again and again, when you got to prove yourself over and over and over again, what did that do just to build some of that resiliency inside of you?
I mean, I guess you can, like, if you know, everyone's seen the movie Sandlot.
Yeah.
You know, but I didn't suck like Smalls. I was actually good.
Yeah.
I had to just show up and show people, like, hey, I can play.
Yep.
I could do what I can do. But I think that's a way I was able to connect with people, was by, you know, having that community of playing baseball.
Sure.
Like, join the Little League tryouts, making All-Stars every year, stuff like that. And every single town I went to, and just naturally fit into it. Coaches loved me. I was a team player. I worked hard. I wanted to be the best. I'm very competitive. So that was the life. I mean, having that experience, I would never trade it in for anything. I mean, I do envy people that have that rooted community feeling.
Sure.
I've never had that feeling.
Yeah.
And I'm hoping now that I've signed a 10-year lease here that I can now have that rooted community feeling, and people will get to know me. Hey, James, how you doing? And hey, Bob, how you doing? Stuff like that. I really like that. I like those type of connections when you can get to that point in a relationship. But I mean, that baseball element, that was the thing that I was most comfortable in. So I think that's why stretching into this thing, you know, joining and starting this brewery, this brew pub, it really was like, you're going to go in there and do it. You're going to figure it out. You've done things like this before. You've risked things before. So let's go ahead and try it and see what happens. Yeah,
the muscle memory's there. You don't have to develop it. It's already there. So you moved to Charleston, beautiful town. Yep. And do you do all of high school there?
I do.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then what was the living situation like with your parents divorcing at the time?
At that point, my dad had moved back to Raleigh, North Carolina. That's where his family's from. And my mom was a single parent. She worked 2 full-time jobs.
Wow.
Made ends meet, did what she could do. She retired in the military. But, I mean, it was tough. Yeah. So see my mom work that hard and, like, just take care of us, it's another motivation. Is like, I come from a family, we work hard. Yep. You get up every day, you bust your butt, get to work. There's no excuses. And my mom always had the mentality, someone out there is doing it better if she doesn't get up and get it done every day. Hey. So, I sometimes would never even see her for like a couple of days because she's working so much. Yeah. So I'd go to school in between that and, you know, playing football and doing other things that I was doing after school. I had girlfriends and like, high school, I had part-time jobs and stuff like that. My life was busy. So in that stage of my life, I just kept myself busy.
Sure.
Sitting there and dwelling about, hey, my parents got divorced. Like, I wasn't in that mindset. I feel for people that have those things happen to them. It's not a fun thing, but you can either get up and do something about it and move on with your life, or you can sit there and dwell on it. And I always say, move forward or fail forward. Always move forward or fail forward. If you're moving forward, you're doing something correct.
Yeah.
That's the way I took it.
Yeah, because bacteria grows better in stagnant water when it's not moving.
Correct.
But you let it, you get banks and you've got a river running, and then all of a sudden, well, probably not anymore, but at one point you could drink from that river, right? Yeah. So that's kind of the same concept you're talking about. What were kind of the highlights from high school? How'd you do grade-wise? What was...
Oh, man, I was a C student. If I was lucky, I got...
Quintessential jock.
I got to a point where sports, I moved away from sports, and I needed a reset in my life. I'd actually gotten in trouble with the law.
Okay.
And I ended up getting the book thrown at me as a convicted felon.
Dang.
At 17 years old.
Wow.
So over something stupid.
Yeah.
And it wasn't that big of a deal. I think it was during an election year or whatever. The DA threw the book at me. That's where I actually got very involved in church. And found a youth minister who helped me get my life back together. And he actually knew the DA guy, and not that he struck a deal, but he knew that I was in good hands at that point. And they let me off with just probation, but they charged me as an adult at 17 years old. And it really shaped my life, where it was like, all right, it's time to grow up. So I basically dropped all my friends. I moved, I got a GED, got to work, and just started building my skills of, all right, how do you manage things? How do you manage business? How do you manage people? And I started from the ground up at this lumber company in Raleigh, North Carolina. I moved away. So, I had to go get a fresh start, get away from all the bad influences. And, a lot of people are like, why would you share stuff like that? Well, why not? I am who I am.
Yeah.
I'm not scared. I'm not trying to pretend to be anybody else than who I am. And I think that's a big problem with some people, that they're scared to talk about their past.
Sure.
I embraced my past. It taught me a lot. And, I moved on and, had a great life. My first marriage was in North Carolina, so it took me there, but it also gave me I had this drive to I'm going to be better than anybody. I don't care what happened to me in my life. And I went and started at the ground floor of this lumber company, and I helped grow that business to over $1 billion a year.
Wow.
And just worked my tail off. I was working 15, 16-hour work weeks. And so everyone goes off to college. I went off to work. I learned from the School of Hard Knocks.
Yeah.
And I just figured things out. Like, everyone's like, oh, how are you so good at Excel, James? I'm like, I didn't go to school for that. They're like, oh, you didn't? I'm like, no, I just figured it out.
Yeah, just learned,
and
taught myself.
I think that's the thing that people don't understand. I think you actually learn things better when you just try.
Mm-hmm.
And you just, I failed. I didn't do that right. I didn't do this right. And, now you got YouTube and Google, so there's no excuses.
Yeah, I call it YouTube University.
Yeah.
Dude, it's weird because I actually forget sometimes. I think the emerging generation, Gen Z, the kids that are now joining the workforce, who you're probably going to hire to work here, it's like second nature to them to just YouTube and now ChatGPT everything. I still sometimes try to figure it out on my own. We had a car situation, and I was trying to figure out how to take a part off. And I sat there and tried for an hour and a half, and then I was like, wait a minute, there's probably a YouTube video about this. Sure enough, within 10 seconds, saw the YouTube video, realized I didn't have the right part. There's a custom part. You can actually borrow it from Advanced Auto Parts.
Yeah.
And so I went and borrowed it, and my dad and I figured out, and I just was like, man, I could have saved myself another hour of figuring stuff out. But what I love, going back to what you said, I love that you're not afraid to share your story. Yeah. Everybody's got highs and lows. There's things in, I would almost argue, everybody's past that could be looked at as negative or a blemish, but truly they're things that help us grow and help us take the next step, and they help shape who we are. And for some, like you said, it causes people to not move forward, but then others, it's the motivation they need to take the next step and to go all in on something. And so you moving and just saying, I'm going to pour everything into this lumber company, hard work. It had to have started to build a lot of the resilience that was already there inside of you.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think that, once I started becoming successful, it gave me the confidence, like, hey, it's not over. Like, you haven't screwed up for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
And, to go back to it, I've always looked at, like, oh, people who are convicted felons are bad people. Like, look, most people in the world are good people. They just do a bad thing.
Yeah.
People do bad things. It happens. And
Yep.
we need to learn to forgive and move on, and they need to learn to accept it.
Yeah.
And, that was probably the biggest thing for me, is learning to accept my situation. And I did. And it took a long time. It was not like an overnight thing, but you got to be your own worst critic sometimes. And sometimes, like, me being my worst critic was just like, stop feeding into the crap. Like, stop listening to the noise.
Sure.
So what, you didn't go to college? So what, you went and got a GED? You know what? I got that GED in 2 weeks. Like, it took me no time. The only reason it took me 2 weeks is because that's a requirement that it did. I passed it on my first try. So I'm like, well, does everyone do that? I don't know.
Yeah.
Who cares? Why you keep analyzing yourself and comparing yourself to everyone else? Just focus on you. And that's what I started to do. And my life started to get better. So then I ended up getting married to a girl named Paulina. We had a child when I was 22 years old.
Wow.
So, and then I bought my first house when I was 23. And this was right before the housing market collapsed.
Yep.
But I started to, I got promoted. I became an area manager for the lumber company. Started moving up through the ranks, performing very well, was one of the best performers on the team. And then, man, when the housing market crashed, it was a disaster.
Yeah,
and like, it changed everything. It changed our pay structure. It changed how much money I was making every day. And it caused you to adapt. So I was like, all right, well, I'm going to keep working hard. And the harder I worked, the more it, like, drove me away from my first wife. Or, ended up becoming different people. We were younger, too. So being younger, and then once you hit, like, your late 20s into your 30s, you're like, I'm a completely different person than when we got married, and she was too. And we're great friends to this day. So, I mean, it was rough. I mean, every divorce is not pretty, but, very, very civil to a degree. And she's a great mom. So I'm so glad that we have a great, great daughter together. Her name's Dominique. She's beautiful. She's smart, and she's a hard worker also. And, I have no regrets. Once again, something good came out of that.
Yeah.
And, like the whole getting arrested thing, something good came out of that. It was like, I have to work hard. I have to work extra hard. And that just drove me to do the things that I want to do in my life now. So, and then from that divorce that, I was like, well, you got to be successful. You got to be successful. So I just kept diving into work and like, working 15, 20-hour days every single day, not having weekends off. I remember answering the phone on Christmas for stuff. It was just, that's not the life you want, but it took me to realize that. Everyone else kept telling me that. Everyone's like, calm down, you're doing the best, you're the best. Well, and I'm like, it wasn't ever good enough for me. So this achievement of, I want to be the best was just I was my own worst enemy. So you got to sit back and you're like, well, what am I doing wrong? Well, you're working hard. You need to learn to delegate more. You need to learn to make sure that you're prioritized more with your life. You got to have a good work-life balance. Yeah. But I do love working. So I think that what I decided to do then was I ended up getting another promotion there. I'm now, like, freshly divorced. And my daughter, Dominique, she had a really good friend named Maya, and they always had play dates together. At this point, I think they're like 2 or 3 years old. Maybe 4. We used to go over to Betsy's house, and they would play in a play date. And Betsy was single and never thought of it. And then we realized, oh crap, we were born in the same hospital in Japan. Like, and on top of that, like, November 6th for me, November 3rd for her. So
that's
like,
wild.
It's just like we're manufactured in the same place. Yeah. All this kind of cool stuff. And she's just like me, military brat, grew up all around. So it was like, this is like a girl James. Like, it was like, this is awesome. So I was very intrigued, and we started dating, and it was pretty quick after my divorce. I wasn't really looking. It just kind of happened. Yeah. And now me and Betsy have been married for over 10 years, and we got married on the 4th of July. That's awesome. Back in 2014. Heck yeah. So, I mean, it's been a crazy, crazy ride. Yeah, I know, right on America. Yeah. So we had everyone's like, oh, it's kind of ironic you got married on Independence Day, huh? Yeah, yeah. But it's our favorite holiday. I love fireworks. We had a great time. And, you know, once I met Betsy, she's very successful. So, you know, I always make this, like, you know, these eye-opening experiences. And I had no idea, like, you know, how much she was successful.
Wow.
And so we're starting a date, and she shares with me, like, how much her bonus check was. She worked at John Deere. And I look at it, and I kill myself. I work so much, and she makes more on her bonus check than I do in an entire year.
Oh, wow.
And I felt so worthless.
Oh, man.
She wasn't trying to make me feel worthless. I made myself feel worthless. I'm like, my goodness, how? And it was just like, there's got to be a better way. But this is, once again, like, money is not a measurement of success.
Yeah.
And it came to a point in our lives when we were still back in Raleigh, North Carolina, where she had an opportunity to leave John Deere and take a payout. She did that, and but then instantly people were like, "Oh, come work for us, come work for us," and that's what brought us to Atlanta, because the lumber company I worked for, headquarters was in Lawrenceville.
Okay.
So we moved to Cumming, Georgia.
Nice.
About 7 years ago, and loved the area. And actually, we literally just picked it by just pointing on a map. Like, we were like, let's go here because it's in the middle of where we both work, and that's kind of how it all happened. And came here, and
you didn't know it was like the fastest growing community in America, and
idea.
all the growth and
the universe.
The best schools in the country are there, and it's unreal. Yeah.
So I mean, and then so I'm working at this lumber company. I'm traveling. I'm going to the Atlanta. I was flying out every Monday. I was coming back sometimes on Thursday or Friday night.
Sure.
I was like a walking zombie, and sometimes it was a big important thing to me because I wanted to make sure that I was still part of my children's lives. So every 2 weeks, I was going back to Raleigh, North Carolina. I was driving back to Raleigh, North Carolina every 2 weeks just to hang out with my kids for a Friday night, a Saturday, and a Sunday morning.
Yeah.
And I did that every 2 weeks for, it had to be 5 years.
Wow.
4 or 5 years.
Wow.
And then basically that's when I would say probably, I don't know, 2018. I'm sorry. It was 2018. The company that Betsy came here to work for was starting to expand, and they needed someone to help them with logistics and some kind of like inventory management.
Sure.
And they also had an online ordering site that they needed worked on. So I joined the forces, and it was like, I don't know, probably about 20 to 30 people at the time. And by the time I left there recently, it was about 50 to 60 people.
Great.
So the company kept growing. Me and Betsy were working together. She was in one department. I was in another one. She became a vice president there. I was instantly a director there.
Wow.
And by the way, I did skip over this. At the lumber company, I did become a regional manager. But that's when I realized, like, man, you're still, even though you've gotten to the rank that you want, you're still working 16-hour work weeks. And you know what? You've made it to where your bosses, they expect that from you. They'll tell you they don't expect that from you, but the only way you're going to get the job done the way they ask you to is to work those hours.
Yeah.
And so stepping away and going to a company that was a small startup, it was actually very educational for me because I went and worked for a large company, and the way they operate was so good. They operated so good, and they had structures and policies, things I didn't have to figure out. It was great.
Yeah.
You go to a small company, it's a small startup, they don't have anything figured out.
Yeah.
They're figuring it out.
Uh-huh.
And they used to call it FFIO. I'm not going to repeat what that stands for,
Cool.
but it's figure it the
out. Yeah.
And so basically, they are really just trying to, that's the whole like motivation that we had there was like, we're going to figure these things out. And we did. We figured out a lot. We ended up moving into a very large building. And once again, my fault. I started work crazy hours. And I'm going back still every couple of weeks to see my kids. And then I realized one day that I go back, my mom is starting to forget things. And I'm like, she's not remember. She didn't even remember I was coming here. It was like little things. Oh, I never made that meal for her. It was my favorite dish she always used to make me. She can't remember how to make it. It's just things like that. So you started to see early signs of dementia kick in. So I'm like, all right, I'm going to fix this. I have never failed at things before in my life. I've made mistakes, but I've never failed at anything. So I'm like, I'm going to get my mom. I'm going to bring her over to Georgia. I build her this mother-in-law suite. We buy this big house. She's going to love it, and I'm going to make her better. I'm going to get her the proper care. didn't work out.
Yeah.
And so she moves here, you know, with the support of Betsy and some other friends. We helped my mom. And then she basically, she started to go downhill so fast that she could no longer stay with us. So, I mean, it was like to a point like you come home and you're talking to someone that you don't even recognize them, even though that's your mom, person that's raised you your whole life.
Wow.
So she needed professional help. And I think it came a little too late because by the time we got her into a home, she lasted about 2 more months.
Oh, wow.
And then it just, they forget to swallow. They forget how to do anything, the basic functions. So it is a slow, slow death.
Yeah.
So that event happened August of last year. Well, no. Yeah, August of last year was like literally a week before her birthday.
Yeah.
I'm working crazy hours. She's now passed away, you know, and once again, it's this, there's nothing I could have done to help her. It just is what it is. You have to accept those things.
Sure.
So Betsy's like, get out of the house. I want you out of the house. You're dwelling on this. So she's like, I got an event I have to do for work down in Savannah. So I get in the car with her. We drive all the way to Savannah. This is probably a week after my mom passed away.
Yeah.
And every year at the end of August, I go down to Edisto, South Carolina with all my buddies from Charleston.
Sure.
Where I went to high school, and we play fantasy football. You want to like nerd out with me? I will nerd out with you with fantasy football all day long.
Well, it's funny. I've been to Edisto several times, and so
you?
I'm familiar with, you know, you take it slow at Edisto. There's not much to do. So I'm sure getting in a you know, rental house and getting all your buddies together and having a few drinks and doing fantasy football.
We have definitely slowed down.
Yeah.
But we try to act like we're still in a frat party or whatever, but we have definitely slowed down. And all of us now are mostly married and have kids and stuff like that. But we started when I think this football league's gone on for like 20 years now.
Wow.
And basically, that was an event that I looked forward to every year in my life. So Betsy's like, I want you out of the house. Take the week off. Like, the owners where I worked at last year were like, dude, take the time off. You're the best. Just take the time off.
Yeah.
Family first. I think they would have let me have a whole month off at this point. So they were being very, very kind to me. And so I take advantage of it, take the whole week off, go down there. And we check into the Airbnb in downtown Savannah. It was in the middle of August. It was beautiful there. I love hot weather. I don't care how hot it gets. So I take Betsy across the road, set her up in the hotel, get her all situated so she can do her presentation. And what do I like to do when I travel? I love to go to breweries. I'm going to a brewery. So I walked to Services Brewery, and they were closed for an event. I was like, oh, man.
Yeah.
So I look up on my app, and I'm like, okay, there's another one southbound. It was like a mile away in the middle of August. And I don't know why, but I'm like, I want to walk. And I just walked. By the time I got there, I was just drenched. Like, I was sweating, and it was like, I mean, the pits were going. I mean, it was bad. I shouldn't have walked.
They're like, there's a homeless guy coming in to get beer. What's going on?
I mean, I had a polo on and everything, so I looked a little bit presentable. Like, did he just get off the golf course? Did he run from the golf course? Like,
Yeah.
So he basically.
Which, if you're listening to this, you've never been to the South in the summer. It's bad.
Yeah,
it's
bad.
hot and muggy, so humid. You take a shower, you dry off, you step outside, you're soaking wet again.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So I enter this place, and they're like doing some kind of event in the front. They're like, oh, they have the bars in the back. So I go in this bar, and their setup is it's like an old school brewery, like one of those warehouses where they used to do tours, I guess.
Sure.
So it was like no air conditioning. It was hot.
Yep.
But, you know, they had the big fans going and stuff like that, and all these tanks and all this cool stuff. And I'm just sitting there drinking my first beer, chatting up the bartender. His name was Robert, great guy. And then this girl comes over to me. Her name's Jen, and she just started talking to me about stuff. And she's like, hey, do you want to see how it all works? I'm like, heck yeah. I thought like I was the luckiest guy in the world.
Yeah.
So she was the brewmaster there.
Sweet.
One of the brewmasters. She's like, well, I make just the basic stuff, but the other guy makes all the cool, unique, you know, basically test stuff, you know, things that they're trying to try out new. But I was like, yeah, I don't care. I want to see how it works. And she, for like 2 hours, was like, just here's this, here's that. Here, have this beer. Here, have that beer. This is how this works. And it was so, like, just, I was, like, coming from a manufacturing background. I was like,
sure.
Oh, this is so cool. Like,
yeah.
I can do this. I mean, I was a fool for thinking that at the time, but I can do this. And I just was always loved the breweries, and me and her shared our stories. I never told her about my mom. I wasn't looking for sympathy. I was just sharing like my life like we're doing right now. I'm talking about things. I left that part out because I, at that point, still wasn't done with it. I wasn't done absorbing and grieving all my stuff out. So she's just like, hey, I heard you walked here. I'm like, who'd you talk to? She's like, oh, Robert told me you walked here because you came in here all sweaty. I was like, yeah. She's like, all right. She's like, well, let's go show a couple more things. So she showed me the canning line, and then she's like, comes back over and she's like, hey, Robert, it's all on me. Give him a shirt, give him a hat because he's all sweat through his shirt. She's like, and get him an Uber. All on us. I mean, I'm like, man, I make good money. I don't need your help. She's like, no, you're a great guy. I just want to help you.
Nice.
And I was like, I get back to like the Airbnb and I just break down. Never had an emotional, just like, I don't know, cried like a baby.
Yeah.
And Betsy was there and she was just like, saw me. I was like a wounded animal. So the next day we're on the beach in Tybee Island and I looked at her and I said, I don't care what it costs. I don't care what happens. We can be homeless. I want to sell everything that we have and I want to open a brew pub. And she, without hesitation, the best person in the world, was like, let's do it.
Golly.
Didn't even hesitate. She just said, let's do it. And like her confidence in let's do it was more than I was like, am I sure about this? Like she's just reeks confidence. And that's one of the things I love about her the most.
Yeah.
And then that's where this journey started, man. I mean, that's the full circle story. I mean, I make fun of myself. I changed my handle, like my name tag on like Instagram to Midlife Crisis Brew Owner. I'm going to embrace it. I mean, it is basically, I had to, say I was going to do these things. And so I started researching it and we just started running with it from that minute on. Like literally later on that day, I was on the phone with someone about brewing equipment and, what's the process, and started trying to talk to other people, and we started talking to an SBA loan officer and stuff. Never done any of this stuff. Never done.
So another one of those situations where I'm just going to work hard and figure it out.
Just make phone calls, ask questions.
Yeah.
Never be afraid to ask questions. Don't think they're stupid. Just ask a lot of questions and just keep asking them the way you want to. And if you got to ask them in a million different ways so you can understand it better, do it.
Yeah.
And that's what we had to do. And I mean, it was a lot. I mean, from that statement I made on the beach to where I am now, like, it's not all peaches and cream. It is a lot of work, and you got to be dedicated and committed to continue to stick with it. And if you're relying on someone to do their job, don't do that. I call, I ask. If someone's 1 day late, 1 minute late, I'm on them. I'm like, hey, where's this at? Because if you're not moving forward, you're in a stagnant state again.
Yep.
And people will forget about you if you don't keep asking questions and poking them. So we kept asking questions with the SBA loan officer, and one of their concerns was, you guys have no experience in this. Why would I give you a loan to do this? So me and Betsy came up with this great idea. We're going to go buy a brewery. We're going to inherit their staff because we're smart like that. We're just going to go buy a brewery. Well, we started researching, and Betsy's up there doing her wizardry on the computer and figuring things out, and she just sends me this post. So at this point, we've created a channel, like the Brew Pub channel, like on WhatsApp, and we're just sharing all these ideas back and forth with the family and stuff. And it's just this Voodoo Brewing company. I was like, what the heck is that? I had no idea what it was. And so I look it up, and I start seeing their videos, and I'm like, yeah, we're a franchise that you don't have to have brewing equipment. We'll teach you, and we'll help you, and there's food with it too. And I was like, oh, that's great, because one of the things I'm not that I hate it. One of the things that I
have the same issue.
I want food at a brew pub.
Yes.
And sometimes like a food truck is just not good enough. I want a menu at the brew pub.
Yep. I need options.
Yep. And so they checked that box. I'm like, okay, cool. So then we were just like, let's call them. So we called them, and they got back to us. They made sure we had enough money to start. And they do the little vetting process, and then they hook you up with this agency that checked us out. I don't know if they still use them. I'm not quite sure. I mean, it's been over a year now. And, we just basically, they said, come out on what they call a Discovery Day. That was last November.
Which Voodoo's based in, is it Pittsburgh?
It's based in Meadsville, Pennsylvania.
Okay, cool.
They have a brewery there called The Compound, and then one of their flagship stores is the North Shore location, which is right down the road from. You can see the Steeler Stadium.
Cool.
From right outside their doors.
Yeah, yeah.
So pretty cool place, and we flew out there, and we stayed in a hotel right across the street from there, and then basically we went in. Me and Betsy, we're not ones to wait. We go and do our research and stuff like that, and so we were already checking the place out the night before, and I was like, man, this beer is really good. I'm impressed. I didn't think that it would be this good. It's a franchise, right? It's a franchise. It's going to be bad. It's like McDonald's, even though McDonald's is still good, right? They have their thing. So, okay, check. And then so the next day we meet them, and they're just all a bunch of great guys. So got to meet the one of the founders, Mateo, was actually there, and he's like, I usually don't do these things. So it was like the universe aligned it to where we can meet everybody.
Sure.
And so after that visit, we had the food, we had the drinks. I started looking at the numbers, and I'm like, all the research said your margins have to be this, you got to do this, do it. So then I even also did additional research on other Voodoo brew pubs where they were open and checked out their demographics and did all that stuff. So I did all my homework. They didn't provide me with any of that, because that's another thing. If you were going to just rely on somebody to give you something, never take that. Take the initiative, look it up yourself.
Yeah.
And focus on things, because numbers don't lie; they tell you everything.
Mm-hmm.
And the good thing about, once again, we live in a Google and YouTube world. There's all the information's there. You just got to be willing to look at it and analyze it. So we started looking, and we're like, wow, we live in a really, really, really awesome place. The medium household income here is great. Schools are great. Home ownership levels here are great. Just a very affluent area. So. Perfect location. Let's do it. We signed our franchise agreement, and within a year of doing that, we're a week from opening.
We're sitting in the same place that people are going to be finally enjoying it. So, so from the moment you have this moment on the beach, Tybee Island, right by Savannah, you have this experience. Was the interaction with Jen something that made you go, I could be that person for somebody else?
I think I learned in that moment, when I was willing to give up everything, money didn't matter anymore.
Yeah.
And, everyone's like, well, money does matter to a degree. You want to be able to take care of yourself, but it's not a measurement tool for my success. My happiness is. And so I've learned as I've gotten older that if I'm happy, that's a measurement of success.
Yeah.
I would rather be living in an RV, which I have lived in an RV for a year before with Betsy.
Cool.
We did that for fun. And I'd rather be living in an RV, having less things, and just being happy with my situation. And I think when I decided to step away from, I guess, the corporate world is what you would say, and risk it all and be my own person and have control over my own destiny, that gave me a sense of freedom to a degree. And everyone, even from my previous employers to my friends to my family, all of them have been very, very, very supportive. And I think that's where you can also see who your true friends are. And some people have came up to me and said, James, you're crazy. You're going to just risk it all and do it? I'm like, yeah, why not?
Yeah.
What's the worst that can happen? I could save my money, and I could still feel incomplete about my life, or I can move forward and do something that I actually have passion about and give it a shot.
Yeah.
That's what I'm going to choose to do.
Yeah. And you signed a 10-year lease, so you're going to do it for at least the next decade.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
That's awesome. And so part of this experience has been you getting to, you mentioned these Voodoo locations typically have food, but you've gotten to kind of decide how you guys are going to do your menu and bring in your own chef and kind of do your own thing with that. What's that experience been like? And as you guys have kind of planned out, what the grand opening is going to look like.
Well, Voodoo does have a corporate menu, and we will follow that menu. But the cool thing about Voodoo is they do allow you to have some local flair items. So, if you are opening a Voodoo in Florida, you're probably going to be heavy on, your local items are going to be heavy on, seafood.
Yeah.
If you're someone in Texas, maybe some barbecue and stuff like that. So when we got here, we get to choose our local flair items. we were basically like, okay, what are the biggest things here? You know, we could go fried chicken, chicken and waffles, shrimp and grits. We ended up going with shrimp and grits, but not because it's a local flair item.
Yes.
We started doing cross-utilization of the menu.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
So basically, I met Christopher through a colleague at work, and Christopher is a chef for, I used to be a corporate chef for IHG, and he really like opened my eyes to what I was getting into. And he sat down, saw their menu, and he's like, look, let's not try to like, he's like, I get that like you might like this on the menu, but if you end up throwing it away at the end of the day,
what's the point?
You're gonna be wasting money.
Yeah.
So it was like, you can still give that value to customers by giving them a different dish without getting different SKU items in the building. So we really worked hard on limiting, because this is a smaller space than most breweries. Most breweries are huge warehouses or like a 5 to 6, maybe even 7,000 square foot place. This is 3,300 square feet. So if we want to make it in this footprint, we have to make sure that we have the space, and every little inch down to like every foot in this place has to be planned out. Like, how are you going to do it? How are you going to execute it?
Yep.
And that started with the kitchen. Like, that starts with your operations behind the bar and behind the kitchen. And so having Chris was very instrumental, like, in making sure that I planned this correctly. So I sat down with a kitchen designer, and where I was at, he literally laughed at my plan. He was like, no, you're not going to do this. You need to do this.
Yeah.
And so he showed it to me, and being from an operational standpoint, you know, from manufacturing where I came from, I saw it. I was like, okay. And then he started just like explaining it to me. I'm like, that makes sense. Like, add a wall here will give us more wall space for storage, and adding, you know, this over here makes it to where people are not walking over each other. So that's the other thing about our kitchen, is we're trying to make it to where members are not walking over each other's, like, there's a space for them to operate in. And we're making sure operators, or line cooks in this degree, are not interfering with each other.
Yeah.
Because that's the biggest thing where I came from in manufacturing, is when you have operators crossing each other's paths, it's inefficient. You're stopping, accidents can happen, all that good stuff. So it's the same thing in the kitchen. And having Chris to help me do that, I could not have done the menu planning without Christopher. He was incredible.
Amazing, yeah.
And you met him earlier today. Great guy. Super nice guy, and you know, he literally worked pro bono for me for a couple months, so he's got skin in the game. He's dedicated.
That's awesome.
I'm glad to find a business partner like him, because you just don't find those people all the time, and he stepped up and helped me a lot, and just changed my whole like outlook about this. And you know, one of the things me and Betsy decided to do was make sure we didn't spare any expense on getting the right equipment to get the right footprint.
Sure.
So like, just like, for example, I told you guys the hood was in the middle of this building.
Yeah.
It literally divided the building. So imagine if you sat in a dining room that was a horseshoe shape.
Yeah.
That's what this was. So, you know, that was $30,000 to move that hood.
Good Lord.
So just to move the hood was $30,000, get it down, break it down, fix it, repair it,
clean it, put it back in.
All that stuff. Yeah. It was a nightmare. And, but it was those little things that me and Betsy are like, we'll pay for that in labor, having somebody walk around that hood in the future. We'll pay for that in less than a couple months. In less than a couple months, we've lost money.
Yep.
We're not saving money at that point. So you can't be, you got to learn to live within your budget, but you also make sure that you understand that, like, if you're saving $1 today, it could cost you later.
Yeah.
And so that was where Chris came in. He really opened our eyes to efficiency. I literally just thought like kitchens operated like, oh, you're cooking like in your kitchen at home.
Sure.
No idea.
Yeah.
No idea.
Yeah.
And I'll have a lot more appreciation for how a brew pub or a restaurant runs these days, because it's a lot.
Well, what's amazing too is like I got to see some of the equipment, and it's amazing, like state of the art, top of the line. You could have skimped on different things and cut corners, but you guys really did go all out with every detail, back of the house and front of the house, which is awesome. What's awesome too is, I mean, you're going to be here for a while, so you're going to reap the benefit of having quality equipment, a better floor plan and footprint, a more functional space, something that really can gather community and start to build some of those relationships and foster the community that you've wanted to build here, simply by moving the hood, changing the floor plan. I mean, it's gonna all contribute to that. And I think it's so cool. Yeah. As you think about the grand opening just a couple of days away, what are you most looking forward to? Like, what is the one thing that has been maybe in the back of your mind that you're just like, I can't wait for this?
I guess the vision I have going in my head is like the shipbuilder putting the ship at sea.
Yeah.
Finally.
Yeah.
Cracking that champagne bottle on the boat and getting it going. It's finally going to happen. And, you know, I would say what I'm excited about the most is just the opportunity to be part of the community. That's what I'm most looking forward to. I want to build some more relationships, and I'm a very hard worker, so sometimes people try to get in touch with me, and I'm like just knee deep in doing things.
Sure.
And so it's difficult, but I think that's the thing I'm looking forward to the most is building those long-term relationships, like that trust with the community of like, oh, we really need a place to go to today. Well, let's just go to Voodoo.
Yeah.
It's always cool there, laid back, chill. And that's what we're going for. We're going for somewhere where, like right now, guys, I'm like wearing a hoodie and flip-flops.
Yeah.
Like I like to hang out. I like to have a good time. I like people to be themselves. And so, I mean, the one word that's going to keep sticking with me is community, community, community. I'm never going to stop thinking about the community. It needs to be, like, that needs to be our focus here. It's their experience when they walk in these doors.
Yeah.
So that's what we're going to focus on, and we're going to make sure that, you know, we're not going to be prepared, like, you know, 100% across the board. It's never going to be enough.
Sure.
But we're going to do our best, and I will say this, I have given it everything that I have, including those 16 and 18 and 20-hour work days. I have blood, sweat, and tears in this place.
Sure.
And I'm hoping that it pays off, and I'm hoping everyone likes it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's going to be amazing. I'm really excited about it. My wife and I are excited to come and check it out and celebrate with you guys and support you guys. If you're listening to this and you're in driving distance of Roswell, Georgia, right off Mansell Road, exit 8 off 400, get up here. As long as it's after December 14th, they're going to be open, and you're going to want to come up here and get yourself a drink and have some good food and build community. That's what it's all about, because craft beer without community is just beer.
That's right.
And I love that. As we kind of land the plane on this conversation, James, again, thank you so much. This is such a cool space. I love that we get to sit in the space and do it before all the hustle and bustle begins. But if you could give some advice to listeners, I always love to end with some practical, tangible takeaways. Like your story, hopefully, if somebody's been listening to this whole conversation, they have already learned something. But what would you say just as a takeaway for them, the listeners, and maybe even for me on some practical advice that you'd give just based on your journey and this experience?
I mean, we talked about it beforehand. Don't be afraid.
Yeah.
I mean, being scared is normal. The fear of failure exists in everybody.
Yeah.
It exists in every single person, every athlete, every superstar, every famous person. It exists. That is a normal response. But a lot of people are so afraid they don't try.
Yeah.
So you got to try. You got to be able to overcome the fear of trying. Just give it your shot, your best shot that you can, and don't be afraid to ask questions, even if you think they're stupid questions. I've gone into breweries and I just started asking guys that have been in the community forever questions about how they run their business. And you know, they're not going to give me the time of day. Everyone is willing to help you. You just got to ask.
Yeah.
Be a good person about it. Just ask, and hey, if they forget about you, don't think that they don't like you. They're just busy. They're successful for a reason.
Yeah.
So continue to harp on them and continue to be persistent, and don't be afraid to fail. That's the thing I'm going to tell you the most. Like, everyone fails.
Yeah.
Everyone is got fear, and those things they're there for a reason. Yeah. But don't let them be your obstacles. You got to be able to overcome those.
I love that. Part of my takeaways are just being resilient. It's okay if you have to keep proving yourself. Just keep doing it. Work really hard. You know, those are values that I feel like were instilled in me as a kid, but I think sometimes we need to be reminded that hard work truly does pay off, and things aren't just going to fall into your lap. We live in such a microwave society that wants instant gratification, and we forget that hard work over long periods of time really can build something significant and great. And I'm glad that you've shared the highs and lows of your story, some of the shining moments, but then also some of the really difficult ones. You know, just to sit here with you and see, the tears well up in your eyes as you're talking about this experience with your mom, and having that experience and going through that grieving process and being willing to unplug just so you could go and spend time with Betsy and Savannah. We wouldn't be sitting here if you didn't have that.
Yeah.
And so it's really neat the way that your mom's impact on your life and legacy is continued because of this place right here. So that's pretty remarkable. I'm excited about it, man. And I can't thank you enough for the opportunity to come in here and record with you. Super pumped for you and Betsy. Any closing thoughts or ideas that you want to leave everyone with?
You know, this place is meant for everybody. We, if you don't like craft beer, if you don't like liquor, we'll have mocktails. We'll have, you know, fun craft sodas. Everything here is thought of locally. We're working hard with like a soda company locally here. That's the sodas we're going to use, and
Sweet.
All of our beer will also be infused in our food as well. So this place is meant for everybody. So if anyone's looking for a place, I got you.
Yeah.
Come give me a chance, and we're looking forward to seeing you. And you tell me your story, and see if we can all have another movement for you. I mean, I can't thank Jen enough, and I haven't even seen her since then.
Wow.
But I hope we cross paths again one day soon, and you know, maybe I'll be somebody's Jen one day.
Yeah, that's. I mean, honestly, man, that's all we can hope for is just the opportunity to pay it forward when somebody does something big in your life like that. Well, James, thank you. I appreciate it, man. This has been a lot of fun. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. I hope you've been inspired. I hope you've been encouraged. Come check this place out. It is for everybody. And remember, craft beer without community is just beer. So get your butt over here and come check it out. James, you're awesome. You and Betsy are great, and excited for you guys. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks, Adam.